Future Now Show. Brought to you by the Club of Amsterdam.
Welcome at the Future Now Show. We have with us Madanmohan Rao, who is based in India, and we have Simon Jones, who is the Chief Academic Officer of the Nazarbayev University in Kazakhstan. My name is Annegien Blokpoel. I'm the moderator of today. And let's start with, I can call you Madan, right? Madanmohan Rao.
Yeah, thank you.
Can you give us in 1 minute what's happening with the digital startups from Asia?
Yeah, hi, my name is Madan. I'm in India's Silicon Valley called Bangalore, also sometimes called the Silicon Plateau or the Silicon Traffic Jam of India. It's a very crowded city with a lot of traffic and pollution, but also a very good buzz for startups. So I'd like to talk today a bit later about some of the big tipping points in India's startup ecosystem, such as the crossing of the $5 billion investment mark in the startup space, and what some trends are for investors and innovators from around the world in terms of how they can work with Indian startups.
Great. So can you tell us 5 billion in startups? What type of startups?
Three of the main categories are mobile, e-commerce, and enterprise software. So we now have the equivalents of companies like Amazon and Zappos and all the big e-commerce players active in India. India is also home to the world's, I think, second largest mobile subscriber base, and we have close to 100 million people using the mobile internet, so that's another big space. And the third one is products for companies and SMEs and big companies, software products to help them manage accounts, customer relations, and so on. So I would say these are the three biggest categories of startups in India today.
And Simon, when you hear that, what do you think? 100 million mobile users and 5 billion in startups in India.
It's certainly an exciting prospect, isn't it? Because you've got a critical mass like nowhere else, where ideas can be tried out, and if they grow, they'll grow extremely big, extremely quickly. So that whole software, mobile, digital space, I think is particularly attractive for India, given its background also in software services as well. That's an important heritage factor it has.
And Madan, is it based in one city or several cities? Are there like start hubs?
Yeah, the main hubs are Bangalore, Bombay, and New Delhi, the capital. But we also are seeing tier 2 and tier 3 cities picking up, such as Chennai, Hyderabad, Pune, Calcutta, and so on. We're also seeing a lot of smaller towns getting into the space, working with the bigger startups in the bigger cities. So even within startup space, there are bigger startups doing work with smaller startups and so on. And I think that's very interesting because it opens up a chance for mergers, acquisitions, and takeovers between startups themselves.
So how many startups are there in India in this field?
Anywhere from 14,000 to 20,000 startups, depending on where you draw the cutoff line, whether it's 2 years old, 3 years old, and so on. So it's very almost 1,000 new startups every year.
1,000 each year, and you have now 14 to 20,000. So
Yeah.
Simon, how many do you have in Kazakhstan?
Well, it won't come as a surprise to you. We have less than that. It's Kazakhstan is a big country, but also it's a small population, about 15. And I think it's important to remember there are actually only 3 ways of making wealth. You can dig it out of the ground, you can grow it, or you can engineer something to add value to it. Everything else is basically just moving wealth around. And where Kazakhstan scores highly is in the minerals and agricultural sector. It has one of the largest agricultural sectors around, at least the size of the Canadian prairies, although it's substantially less productive, and that's where innovation comes in. It has oil fields in the Caspian. There's very significant amounts of recoverable oil. And it also has a minerals industry ranging from coal, for which China has an inexhaustible demand, through to more expensive rare earths and uraniums and high-value minerals like that.
In the Netherlands, we now have the Delta startups, where Nelly Kroes is now actually taking care of a number of the cities that have startup hubs, and she's connecting them and also attracting foreign startups to come to Holland. Is that happening in India or in Kazakhstan for that matter?
In India, well, not formally as a government initiative or a state initiative, but we do have a number of foreigners who come to work in India anyway. For example, we had a woman from California called Valerie Wagner. She set up a company here called ZipDial, and last month they were acquired by Twitter for $80 million estimate. So we're seeing a bit of that stuff happening also. A lot of foreigners coming here and setting up startups with the hope of being acquired by either Indian acquisition firms, investors, or from overseas.
Who are the investors? Who are the investors? Are they US companies or UK companies, or who are the foreign investors?
Yeah, the biggest chunk comes from Silicon Valley, obviously, the likes of Sequoia Capital and so on. They have a branch in India, but the headquarters is a mix of US, Israel, and to some extent UK. Another interesting trend last year has been the entry of investor companies from Europe, such as Rocket Internet from Germany, as well as companies like SoftBank from Japan, and Chinese e-commerce companies like Alibaba from China.
Simon, in Kazakhstan, do you have like a collective initiative for all the startups, or is it only in the university?
No, the Kazakhstan government is very proactive in these matters. We have a long time we've established science parks. For example, there's a very big and thriving one in Almaty, which is the largest city in the country, in the southeast. At my own institution, we've set up what is called ABC, the Astana Business Campus. And the Astana Business Campus has major companies who've chosen to inward invest in Kazakhstan, such as Samsung, such as Intel, such as Microsoft. It also has smaller startups coming from the US. For example, the US company HeartStitch, which is based in California, a medical devices manufacturer, is basing itself now in Astana. But one of the things that you have to do if you want to create an innovation culture and succeed in a developing country, it's not just about tax rates and things like that. It's also about creating the infrastructure need. And I don't just mean roads and rails. So, for example, there's no opportunity at the moment in Astana to go and get prototypes made. It's very difficult. There isn't a market there. There isn't a business there. So if you want to set up an innovation campus, as we have, what you also have to have is a business which does prototype design and small-scale manufacturing for companies. Because without that, they can't move from the intellectual property proof of concept stage and start trying things out in the market. And this, I think, is one of the unique points about innovating in emerging economies. It's not just the product, and it's not just the tax and fiscal environments that exist in the country. Sometimes it's very practical things like, do you have a 3D printer here that I can do prototypes with? So it's a fascinating sort of multi-scale program. It's early stages in Kazakhstan, and Kazakhstan is never going to be India. It's going to play to its strengths in minerals and natural resources. But it's taking bold steps, and I think those are steps will help its currently not very productive sectors to have very significant increase in productivity.
And Madan, what do you expect for this for 2015, 2016? What can we expect from India?
We will see a bit more of a move into hardware. India has been mostly known as a software services and products country, but not as much in hardware. If you look at phones, laptops, India is not that big a player in the global market, although recently there are companies like Micromax, which have displaced big companies like Samsung in the local phone market. But these are still companies which assemble components made in countries like China. So I would say an Achilles heel of India in this space is telecom products. So many of the big backbone networks and switching gear for telecom operators, all of these are imported or assembled from parts made overseas. So I would say there is a bit of a push now this year for companies to get into things like making Internet of Things, chips and products, making wearables, nearables, and those kinds of products on a large scale based on small components. So I would say one trend to look out for this year is the entry of Indian companies also into the hardware space.
Interesting. And do you expect them to come to Europe selling their products?
Yeah, I think the first route would be to go to other emerging economies as well. So, for example, Micromax is selling some of its products to other parts of Africa, other parts, I believe, in Central Asia, just the way Chinese companies are expanding first to other parts of Asia and Africa. Then they'll set up a beachhead in the US. Another good example is the company Xiaomi. It's a Chinese mobile phone manufacturer. They are launching in the US, but starting off with accessories, headphones, and all that stuff. Only then they will get into the smartphone business. So I would say the high-end telecom product space in Western countries is very competitive and very high quality. Whereas in many emerging economies, we are happy with good enough solutions. May not be the best solutions, but good enough solutions. So in that space, you will see India and China playing a very tough game.
And probably good enough solutions can already help millions of people that have nothing at the moment to have a much better future.
Yeah, there's a whole school called frugal innovation, how to innovate just enough to make the needs, the basic needs of people met, and worry about full feature innovation much later. So that is very popular in emerging economies right now.
Okay, then let's maybe conclude with this frugal and let's go and build a better future. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks.